My name is Elena Parker. I'm 39 years old, and until recently, I thought I understood what love was supposed to feel like. Quiet, steady, secure. That was before I met Ryan. When we started dating 2.5 years ago, I thought I'd found someone who balanced me. I was calm, methodical, a planner by nature. Ryan was spontaneous, impulsive, the kind of man who could make grocery shopping feel like an adventure. At first, it worked. His laughter filled the empty corners of my house. He said my predictability made him feel safe. I had bought the house long before we met, a small, sunlit place near the coast with white shutters and creaky floors. It was my sanctuary. For the first 18 months, living together felt easy. He moved in slowly, one drawer at a time. I didn't mind. It felt like love until about 6 months ago. That's when Dr. Aria appeared. At first, I thought it was harmless. Ryan said she was a holistic therapist helping him connect with his authentic self. I supported it. Everyone needs someone to talk to. But as the weeks went by, therapy started invading every conversation, every argument, every quiet moment in between. If I reminded him to call the plumber, he'd say, "You're trying to control me, Elena." That's emotional invalidation. If I asked for a night in, just the two of us, he'd sigh, "I'm hearing avoidant attachment energy from you." And if I told him I felt exhausted, he'd nod knowingly. That's your shadow self resisting growth. He'd throw those words around like weapons, each one coated in borrowed wisdom. Still, I tried to be patient. I wanted to believe he was healing, not unraveling. He stopped working full-time around then. His consulting business turned into a hobby that lost money faster than it made any. I covered most of the bills, the mortgage, utilities, groceries. He'd promised to contribute more once his energy aligned. I told myself it was temporary. Then one evening, everything shifted. He came home late from another breakthrough session with Dr. Aria. I was curled up on the couch with tea and an old movie when he walked in, eyes shining like he'd just discovered a new planet. "Elena," he said softly, sitting beside me, "I had a major revelation today." I smiled, trying to sound supportive. "That's great. What kind of revelation?" He reached out and took my hand, his touch almost theatrical. "About us. About this space." He gestured slowly around the living room like a stage performer, gesturing toward an invisible audience. "Dr. Aria helped me see something. My healing can't progress unless I fully claim my environment. I need to make this house my safe space." I blinked. "Your safe space?" He nodded solemnly. "She says I can't truly heal while my energy is competing with yours. To cleanse it, I need to inhabit the house completely. Alone. Just for a week." I thought I'd misheard. "You want me to leave my own house?" He smiled like a monk explaining enlightenment to a confused student. "Just temporarily. It's important for my process. Dr. Aria says it'll help both of us grow. Me, by embracing my space. You, by learning detachment." My pulse slowed. I studied him carefully, his posture straight, his tone calm, his words rehearsed. He believed this. "Where am I supposed to go for a week, Ryan?" "There's a little Airbnb near the cliffs," he said, pulling up the link on his phone. "Or you could use this time to visit your sister. Reflect on your energy. It'll be good for you." I stared at the glowing screen, then at him. My reflection stared back from the dark window, a faint outline of a woman, realizing something she'd ignored too long. He continued, "This is an act of love, Elena. You leaving shows you support my journey." An act of love. That's what he called evicting me from my own home. Inside, something cold uncurled. A quiet, steady thought. He isn't healing. He's rewriting reality one therapy phrase at a time. I didn't argue. Not yet. I just nodded slowly the way you nod when you finally understand the full size of someone's delusion. "I see," I said. "If that's what you need, I understand." His face lit up. "You do. Oh, Elena, this is why I love you. You're so emotionally mature." He leaned forward, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "This is going to be the best thing for us." I smiled faintly and stood. "I'll start packing a small bag." "Thank you," he murmured. Already pulling out his phone, probably to text Tessa, his best friend and frequent cheerleader, for every reckless decision, or maybe even Dr. Aria herself. Upstairs, as I folded clothes into a suitcase, my hands moved calmly, but my chest burned. The air smelled faintly of sage, one of the cleansing herbs he'd been burning lately. I looked around my room, my house, and whispered to the walls. He really thinks this is his safe space. I zipped the suitcase, placed it by the door, and stared at my reflection in the mirror. My own face looked foreign too, composed, too quiet. In that silence, something inside me shifted not loudly but with finality. If he wanted a week of healing, he was going to get it. Just not the kind he expected. I didn't sleep that night. The house was too still, like it already knew something was about to change. Ryan was humming in the kitchen the next morning, making himself a smoothie, like nothing was unusual. I watched him from the stairs for a moment, barefoot, relaxed, his back turned to me as he tossed spinach into the blender. My house, my kitchen, my groceries. When he noticed me, he smiled. Morning sunshine. How's your energy today? I wanted to laugh. Neutral, I said simply. Perfect, he nodded, as if grading me on my attitude. So you'll head out later. Yes, I said. I'll give you the space you need. He kissed my cheek, pleased. Thank you, Elena. This shows how secure you are. Not everyone could do this. His voice was calm, almost kind. That's what made it so disturbing. He genuinely believed this was enlightened behavior. I packed a small carry-on, a week's worth of clothes, my laptop documents, and a quiet sense of resolve. I left the house around noon. I didn't tell him where I was going. The hotel was only 20 minutes away, clean, efficient, anonymous. I checked in under my full name. When the front desk clerk asked, "Business or pleasure?" I smiled faintly. "Reflection," I said. Once inside my room, I pulled the curtains shut and opened my laptop. If Ryan wanted to live in his safe space for a week, he'd soon learn what it meant to maintain a home, and what happened when the owner stopped doing it for him. First, the gas company. I reported a faint smell of rotten eggs near the furnace. Emergency protocol required an immediate shutdown for safety. Second, the water department. I explained that I was the homeowner and had detected an internal leak. They agreed to cut the main line immediately until repairs were made. Finally, the electrical provider. I logged into my account and scheduled a maintenance outage for 1 hour from now. By the time I closed my laptop, I felt the strangest calm, like the air after a storm. I ordered dinner, a club sandwich, and a cup of tea, and turned my phone face down. 3 hours later, the messages started lighting up my screen. Ryan. Hey, the power just went out. Did you forget to pay the bill? Ryan. Okay, now the heat's off too. It's freezing in here. Ryan, Elena. The water's not running. I can't even flush the toilet. What's going on, Ryan? This isn't funny. I'm cold. Call me right now, Ryan. You're punishing me. This is psychotic. Each text came faster, angrier, more desperate than the last. I didn't reply right away. I watched the screen glow in the dark, each message stacking like evidence. Then finally, I typed one short message. That's strange. Must be a neighborhood outage. Anyway, I'm reflecting on my energy like you suggested. Have a peaceful night. Then I turned my phone off. The silence that followed felt sacred. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. For the first time in months, I felt rested. I made myself coffee and opened the curtains to watch the city waking up. Out of curiosity, I unblocked Ryan's number. Dozens of missed calls and messages flooded in overnight, some pleading, some furious. You're cruel. This is abuse. I called the electric company, and they said it was disconnected by the homeowner. That's you, Elena. You think you're smart? You just declared war. I smiled faintly. There it is, I thought. The mask slipping. He'd spent months telling me my emotions were wrong, my reactions invalid. But the first time life became inconvenient for him, he lost control completely. I poured another cup of coffee and whispered to myself, "Welcome to your safe space, Ryan." Later that afternoon, I stopped by the house, quietly, carefully. His car wasn't in the driveway. I peeked through the front window. The place was dark and cold, like a stage after the curtain had fallen. On the counter sat one of his empty smoothie cups, melted into a sticky puddle, a symbolic little trophy of his healing journey. I left without entering. I wasn't ready for confrontation yet, not until he made the next move. That night around 8 p.m., a voicemail notification appeared. I played it on speaker while brushing my hair. Miss Parker, this is Officer Denton from the local police department. We've received a wellness check request from a Mr. Ryan Hale. He claims he's been locked out of your residence and that you've created an unsafe living situation. Please call me back. I froze mid-motion. He called the police. I sat down on the bed and let out a quiet laugh. It wasn't amusement, more disbelief. A man who'd just tried to exile me from my own home was now painting himself as the victim. I called the officer back immediately, my tone steady. Good evening, Officer Denton. I'm Elena Parker. I own the property in question. Yes, ma'am, he said. Mr. Hale told us the utilities are off and that he's unable to enter. That's correct, I replied. There was a gas leak. The utility companies shut everything down for safety. He refused to leave when I informed him. The officer paused. So he's not a tenant? No, officer. He's a guest. My name's on the deed, the bill's everything. I can provide documentation if necessary. He sighed, the kind of weary sigh that told me this wasn't the first domestic story he'd heard this week. Understood, ma'am. I'll let him know it's a civil matter. Please do, I said softly. When I hung up, I stared at my reflection in the hotel mirror again. Same woman, different energy. Ryan wanted a week of healing. Now he was going to get exactly that, 7 days alone in the dark, surrounded by his own noise, forced to face what real silence felt like. And me. For the first time in months, I felt warm even in a hotel room that smelled faintly of bleach and corporate carpet. Sometimes peace isn't found through forgiveness. Sometimes it's found through the flick of a switch. By morning, the situation had escalated, just not for me. I was sitting in the hotel lounge sipping coffee and scrolling through emails when another voicemail appeared. Miss Parker, this is Officer Denton again. I'm currently at your residence with Mr. Hale. He says you've shut off utilities to punish him and changed the locks. Could you call me back, please? I stared at my phone for a long moment, then hit call back. Officer Denton, yes, this is Elena Parker. Thank you for calling. I'm sorry you've been dragged into this. The situation is complicated. His tone was careful, neutral. Yes, ma'am. Mr. Hale says you turned everything off without notice. Actually, I said calmly, the gas company turned it off after I reported a suspected leak. It's a legal safety shutdown. I have the confirmation email if you need it. There was a short pause, paper shuffling maybe. He also says you changed the locks. That's correct, I said, for safety reasons. After the power failed, the electrician I hired said the main breaker box was sparking. I can't have anyone in there until it's repaired. Silence on his end, then a quiet professional sigh. So you're saying the house is unsafe? I'm saying it's mine, officer, and that he was informed of the hazards before he chose to stay behind. He lowered his voice as if leaning away from the noise around him. All right, I'm going to have to tell him this is a civil matter, not criminal. He doesn't have tenancy rights if he doesn't pay rent. I smiled faintly. That's right, he doesn't. He hesitated, then added, He's pretty upset, ma'am. Claims you're trying to control him emotionally. Of course he does, I said. He's learned that word from his therapist. That made the officer chuckle softly despite himself. Understood. I'll close this out, ma'am. Stay safe. When I hung up, I exhaled slowly, letting my shoulders drop. The tightness in my chest, the one that had lived there for months, was finally easing. But I wasn't done. Not yet. By the time the officer ended the call, I already knew what I had to do next. Ryan had called the police, tried to paint me as unhinged, tried to twist the story to make himself the victim. He wanted control. I was about to show him what losing it looked like. I contacted a 24-hour moving company. I need a full pack and move service, I told the manager. Everything in the main bedroom closet, the second room, and the bathroom cabinets. Today. The man on the other end hesitated. Today? Yes, I'll pay whatever it takes. 2 hours later, I was back at the house. The air inside was icy, the silence thick. I could see my breath as I unlocked the door. The movers arrived shortly after two polite men in navy uniforms who didn't ask questions. Just these items, I said, pointing to the list. They belong to someone who no longer lives here. While they packed, I walked from room to room, checking drawers and corners. Everywhere I looked, pieces of him lingered, a cracked mug, a yoga mat rolled in the corner. One of those ridiculous affirmation cards that read, "Let go to grow." I almost laughed. By the time the movers finished, every trace of him was gone. Every essential oil bottle, every shirt, every self-help book stacked by the bed. All of it loaded into a clean white van, bound for a storage facility across town. I paid for the first month in advance. Unit secured. Climate controlled, the clerk said, handing me the code. Good. Let him heal in climate control. Next, I called a locksmith. By 4 p.m, every lock in the house had been changed. Then a security company came to install new cameras inside and out. When the technician handed me the tablet that connected to the system, I held it like a new set of house keys. Freedom had a digital glow. That night, as the heat returned and the pipes rattled back to life, I sat on the couch with a glass of wine and composed a message. Me, Ryan. The police contacted me. I'm glad you're safe. The utility crews found significant issues with the wiring and gas lines. The house will be undergoing long-term maintenance. It's unlivable for now. I've had all of your belongings professionally moved to a secure storage unit. Here's the address, unit number, and access code. I've paid for the first month. Since you've said my energy is so toxic, I'm respecting your healing journey by giving you the ultimate safe space, your own. This relationship is over. You are no longer welcome on my property. Any attempt to return will be considered trespassing. Goodbye, Ryan. I hit send, waited a heartbeat, and then blocked his number. For a long time, I just sat there watching the shadows shift on the living room walls. The house was warm again, but I still felt a lingering chill, one that came from something deeper than temperature. He had spent months turning my home into a battleground disguised as therapy, but now it was quiet, still, mine again. Later that night, I got one final email. No greeting, no signature, just fury written in capital letters. "You're a sick woman. This is financial abuse. I'll sue you. You stole everything I own." Dr. Arya says this is grounds for legal action. Dr. Arya, of course. I stared at her name, my reflection flickering faintly on the laptop screen. Something about it stuck in my throat. The way he always said her name like a prayer. The way he smiled after every session. The way her advice always seemed to benefit him, never me. A tiny voice whispered at the back of my mind. Look deeper. I closed my laptop, leaned back on the couch, and let the realization settle. This wasn't about therapy. It never was. It was about control, and maybe something else entirely. I woke up the next morning to the sound of rain tapping against my window, the kind of steady rain that makes the world outside feel muffled and far away. It was peaceful until I checked my inbox. Dozens of unread emails, most from Tessa Ryan's loyal friend and constant defender. Subject: You're a monster. Elena Ryan is traumatized. You've thrown him out with nothing. He's staying with me for now, but this is psychological abuse. He trusted you and you betrayed him. You need to return his things immediately, or we'll go to the police. Dr. Arya says what you're doing is financial control. You can't just abandon someone like that. The rest of the messages were just variations of the same thing, long paragraphs filled with moral outrage and half-digested therapy terms. For a moment, I almost felt a flicker of doubt. Was I being too harsh, too cold? Then I remembered the months of manipulation, the nights spent explaining myself to someone who twisted every sentence into a self-help lecture. No, I told myself firmly. Boundaries aren't cruelty, they're recovery. Still, something about those emails bothered me. Every time Tessa said Dr. Arya says, I felt a small pulse of irritation. Why did this woman have so much power over my life, over his? I opened my laptop and began digging. Ryan had left a few of her old invoices saved in our shared email folder. They were all formatted the same way, pale lavender header, cursive signature at the bottom. Dr. Arya Whitfield, Spiritual Healing and Conscious Transformation. I copied the business name and searched online. Nothing. No state license number, no certifications, no website matching that letterhead. But after a few more searches, I found something interesting. A blog post. Title: How to Become a Certified Spiritual Therapist in 48 Hours, My Weekend Webinar Experience. And there she was, smiling in the photo. Same face, same name. A woman who had found her calling after attending a virtual energy guidance workshop. She wasn't a doctor. She wasn't even a licensed counselor. She was a fraud. And she'd been using my boyfriend, my house, as her personal field experiment. The anger that rose in me wasn't loud. It was quiet, measured like water slowly boiling. I went upstairs to clean. The air still smelled faintly of the sage Ryan used to burn in the mornings. In our bedroom, the bed looked too neat, too still. That's when I noticed something wedged behind the nightstand. I bent down and pulled it out, a small receipt, crumpled but still legible. It was for a bottle of women's perfume, not men's cologne. Expensive, luxurious. Purchased 3 weeks ago. My heartbeat stuttered. I don't wear that brand. Attached to the receipt was a small note written in soft, curving handwriting. For when you're ready to stop hiding. Love, A. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at it. So that's what this was. The safe space. The week of healing. It wasn't about therapy. It was about clearing the way. For her. Dr. Arya hadn't just taken over his mind. She'd taken over my home. I opened my laptop again this time with a calmness that surprised me. I found her business contact email, the one listed on the invoices. Then I started typing. Subject: inquiry about billing and professional conduct. Body: Hello, Dr. Whitfield. I'm reaching out regarding a client of yours, Ryan Hale. I've been covering your session fees for several months now and recently noticed some concerning boundaries being crossed between you and my former partner. Attached, you'll find an image of a receipt and a note, both found in my home, written and signed by you. Additionally, I've located documentation showing that your certification is from an unlicensed spiritual coaching seminar. My attorney will be reviewing these materials shortly. I expect you to handle this matter discreetly and ensure I receive no further contact from Mr. Hale or yourself. If not, I will have no choice but to escalate through formal channels, including your payment processors and local authorities. Consider this a professional courtesy. Elena Parker. I attached the photos and hit send. Then I sat there watching the sent icon flicker on the screen and let the silence fill the room again. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming what was mine, the peace that had been stolen piece by piece, disguised as therapy and healing. That night, I stood in the backyard under the rain, breathing in the clean, cold air. The lights from the house glowed faintly behind me. For the first time in months, it felt like my space again. I whispered into the dark. No more cleansing, no more healing, just truth. The next morning, an email appeared from Dr. Aria Whitfield. Subject, please let's talk. Elena, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I never meant for any harm to come to you. Let's not involve lawyers. I'd like to make this right. I smiled faintly at the screen, because when people like her say, let's make this right, what they really mean is you found my weakness. I didn't reply, but I knew the story wasn't over yet. For 2 days, there was silence. No texts, no calls, no emails. Even the air in the house felt lighter, like it had been scrubbed clean of his voice. Then on the third morning, my phone buzzed. It was my lawyer, Ben Laird, calling before 8 a.m. Never a good sign. Elena, he said, tone somewhere between amused and astonished. You're not going to believe this. I just got a call from another attorney, one representing a Ms. Aria Whitfield. I froze halfway through, stirring my coffee. She's lawyering up. Oh, she's terrified. He chuckled softly. Apparently, she's deeply concerned about Ryan's instability and how her guidance has been misinterpreted. She'd like to resolve this quietly. Resolve what exactly? She's offering a deal. She'll pay for Ryan's storage unit for a full year and give you $5,000 in compensation for your emotional distress. In exchange, you sign a non-disclosure agreement stating you won't discuss her or her practice publicly. I let out a slow, humorless laugh. She's trying to buy silence. That's one way to put it, Ben said. Honestly, it's a pretty generous settlement. I swirled my coffee, watching the steam rise. Generous, maybe, but not satisfying. What do you want instead? I thought about the months I'd spent questioning my own sanity, walking on eggshells, believing that cruelty was communication. Then I said I'll sign her NDA on one condition. Ben sounded curious now. Name it. I want a notarized letter from Ryan, I said slowly, in which he acknowledges that he was never a tenant, that he paid no rent, that his demands for me to vacate were based on inappropriate advice from his so-called therapist, and that he fully relinquishes any and all claims to my property now and forever. Ben whistled. That's surgical, Elena. It's justice, I said. She got him into this mess. She can get him out. It took a week. 7 long, beautifully quiet days, where I imagined the chaos on their side. The desperate phone calls, the excuses, the tears, the rehearsed lines about miscommunication. Then, one afternoon, a FedEx envelope arrived. Heavy paper, formal seal. Inside was a single notarized letter. To whom it may concern. I, Ryan Hale, acknowledged that I was never a tenant at 143 Briarwood Lane. I paid no rent, signed no lease, and held no legal or financial claim to the property owned by Ms. Elena Parker. My prior statements and demands were made under poor judgment and misguided advice from a spiritual counselor. I hereby renounce any claim or future claim to said property. Sincerely, Ryan Hale. His signature trembled, but it was there in ink witnessed, stamped and sealed. Ben called later that day. Congratulations, Elena. That's as ironclad as they come. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt clean. Like someone had finally shut off the last dripping faucet in a house that had been leaking for months. That evening, I walked out to the patio with a box I'd kept hidden under the sink. Inside was the perfume receipt, the handwritten note, and one of Aria's glossy spiritual therapy cards, lavender with gold lettering. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still heavy with gray. I placed everything in the small metal barbecue grill and struck a match. The paper curled instantly flame, licking its edges until it turned to black ash. The smoke rose slow and sweet, carrying the faint scent of perfume and ink. For a moment, I just watched it burn. Then I whispered, "You wanted cleansing Ryan. Here it is." The fire hissed, then went out. A week later, I got one last message, not from him, but from Tessa, the loyal echo. "I see you hiding behind your lawyers. Ryan's broken. Everyone knows what you did. You're a cold, manipulative woman. I hope you're happy." I stared at the message for a few seconds, then attached a photo of Ryan's notarized letter, the one where he admitted everything, and hit send. Her reply came 20 minutes later. "She's blocked me now." I smiled. "Good. It's strange how quiet freedom sounds. There are nights when I still wake up expecting to hear his voice downstairs lecturing me about mindfulness or positive energy. Then I remember he's gone. The house is mine again. The silence is mine. The peace is mine. Sometimes healing doesn't look like forgiveness. Sometimes it looks like reclaiming every inch of your own life, the home, the warmth, the calm, and finally realizing you never needed someone else to validate your peace. I poured myself a glass of wine and stood by the window. Outside, the street lights glowed faintly against the rain.